through that handbook for the recently deceased. It says, live people ignore the strange and unusual. I myself am strange and unusual.
Coming to you on the Paranormal UK Radio Network.
It's a strange hobby. Curious. Wouldn't it be better if you put her someplace? I've caused you some trouble.
The first Thursday of every month at 8 p.m. GMT and EST and 5 p.m. PST.
The female perspective on all things paranormal.
I'll buy a cup if you buy a box of my delicious Girl Scout cookies. Do we have a deal? Are they made from real Girl Scouts?
From the East Coast to the West Coast, across the pond and the world beyond.
What an excellent day for an exorcism.
It's time for ParaDivas.
They're here.
Thank you for joining us and welcome to the debut episode of ParaDivas. I'm your hostess with the mostest, Marie Samuels, and with me is my co-hostess with the mostest, Mairanne Donley, bringing you the female perspective of the paranormal with each new episode. Mairanne dwells in the East Coast, I'm on the West Side, and we will cover all things paranormal from the U.S., across the pond, and the world beyond. You can hear us the first Thursday of every month at 8 p.m. GMT and EST and 5 p.m. PST on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Mairanne, are you ready to get this party started?
Let's do it.
So, Mairanne and I first wanted to clarify the title ParaDivas. A lot of people would consider a diva someone like Paris Hilton or Beyonce, and that's not the definition of diva that we are utilizing. I looked up the definition of diva in the Urban Dictionary, and the definition of a diva is to describe a person who exudes great style and personality with confidence and expresses their own style and not letting others influence who they are or who they want to be. A person whose character makes them stand out from the rest. A person who tries to achieve what they want and who do not let people get in their way, and doing so with style and class. And hopefully Mairanne and I will bring style and class to this new show, and you'll all enjoy it very much.
So are you saying we don't, walk around with, little pet dogs in our purses and stuff? And
That's exactly what I'm saying. I don't want people, picturing us going through haunted locations.
Yeah, with our little dog, Toto, too, right?
Yeah. I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog, too. So, we figured the first thing we should do is probably introduce ourselves, and give you a little bit of our background, how we got into the paranormal stuff that we've investigated. And Mairanne, I'll go ahead and let you start.
Oh, thanks.
You're very welcome.
Well, I'm Mairanne Donley. I live in Ohio in the United States, and I've been doing paranormal things probably for about 8 years now. I've investigated or at least been to over 190 locations in the United States. I worked with my husband on most of these things. We have a couple of little businesses that we kind of do with the paranormal. We have panicd.com, which is a database of all paranormal locations that we can find paranormal claims on. We have Dark Shadow Ghost Tours, which we take people out and we show them how to use equipment, how to do paranormal investigations. We do ghost hunts, ghost tours, we do murder mystery dinners. So that's kind of the fun kind of for normal people, getting them into the field. My husband and I, we travel to a lot of different locations, and so we've started some different investigations and things like that we've decided to call Our Haunted Travels. We have a new book coming out. The book that started it all, basically, it's our first investigations down in St. Augustine. So it's going to be a series called Our Haunted Travels of books. And this one is Volume 1, St. Augustine. And what else? I'm actually a school teacher by day. We do Panic D videos, which you can go online and watch all things about haunted locations and our haunted travels. I don't know. What else should I tell you about?
Well, I mean, that's plenty. I think you got me beat. As far as I'm concerned, I'm a Seattle native from Seattle, Washington, born and raised. I've been into the paranormal ever since I was a child. Started playing with Ouija boards, doing seances, when I was 10, 12. Had paranormal experiences as a child. Growing up, the passion just kept getting bigger and bigger. I started my own podcast, Macabre Moments. I have a website there. I have investigated the Sumter Bed and Breakfast, which was featured on Ghost Mine. I have investigated the Cecil Hotel, where Elisa Lam's body was found mysteriously in the water cistern on top of the hotel. Private resident investigations. And then I was co-host of Be on the Edge Radio for 3 years. And now you and I have collaborated, and we are putting together the ParaDivas.
All right, sounds wonderful.
And my day job, I work at a car dealership. I do have a day job. I work at a car dealership as a title clerk, and do accounting and a bunch of mundane data entry. So it's good to have this side gig that gives me something to look forward to.
Absolutely.
No offense to my coworkers out there.
Right. It's just these things are exciting and fun to visit and investigate and even do the research on.
Absolutely. And you do a wonderful job doing research. The Panic D website is fantastic, and I recommend all the listeners to go check that out. It's panicd.com. How many locations do you have on there?
Oh, we have over 700 locations on the site.
Right.
Right. I've been to about 190 of them myself, and the others are all on the list.
Yeah, it's just a great website with a wealth of information on 700 haunted locations in the United States. In fact, I did use Panic D as part of my research for our topic this evening, which we'll get to in a little bit. So going forward, the format of the show, this is an all-female show, so we have all-female all-female hosts, obviously, and then we will have all-female guests. The female is not represented very well in the paranormal field, so we're hoping to correct that and get the female voice out there, the female opinion, the female experience. Not that it's any different than a male's. It's predominantly males that are featured on radio shows and TV shows, and there's a lot of us gals out there that like to get dirty, roll up our sleeves, and crawl through abandoned buildings in the middle of the night. So
and talk to people who aren't there.
Exactly. But they are, Marianne.
Oh, that's right. It's just everybody else thinks we're crazy.
Exactly. Yes. But I mean, especially you with your investigations, and as many as you've done. I know you've gotten responses on EVPs.
Oh, absolutely. We get a lot of EVP responses.
What was one of the most compelling EVP responses that you've gotten?
I have no idea. We did several different ones at the Lizzie Borden house, and we've got responses there where they were cackling and making fun of us, basically. We were in Gettysburg, and we've gotten several different ones in Gettysburg. One in particular at the National Cemetery, where we were trying to talk to Nixon's ancestors, and we got some other individuals who actually responded and said, "We're still fighting."
Wow.
That one is really kind of cool. So as EVPs, I like those ones the best. And then, of course, there's just the day-to-day ones where, you know that somebody's there. You get, the be quiet or shh, somebody's here, or, those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. That that they know you're here. And that's kind of cool, too.
And see, that's what sucks being on the West Coast. On the East Coast, you guys have all these great locations, all the old, battlefields and historical sites are still there. The West Coast, it's still fairly new. There's not a lot to investigate on this side of the country.
Oh, please. You guys have Winchester House. You've got The Rock. You've got all kinds of the famous places out there.
Yeah, Queen Mary,
Disneyland.
Well, Disneyland would be really hard to investigate, though.
It is very hard to investigate. There's always a lot of people there.
Exactly.
Even after hours. After hours, because that's when they get all their cleaning and all the repairs and everything done. So, but you've got all kinds of stuff out there. Don't sell you guys short on the West Coast over there.
Well, it just seems like all the really good locations like Gettysburg, especially, I constantly hear about, people's experiences at Gettysburg. And, that's one place that on my bucket list that I really want to investigate because it seems like there truly is paranormal activity happening there.
Yeah, there's pretty much everywhere in Gettysburg you can get something at some point in the day. And that's something else, too. A lot of people think that it can't happen during the day, and it really does. And a lot of times that's when you get the most activity is during the day, but you just generally brush it aside because there's so much other stuff going on. You don't really notice it as being odd, and you have to throw a lot of it away as evidence because you're like, well, Johnny down the street could have been doing,
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of things happen during the daytime, too.
True. And a lot of investigators, don't think to investigate during the day, but, why not? If they're there 24 hours. It's not just, they don't just come out at night,
Yes, absolutely.
Silly.
Well, I started my paranormal stuff when I was a child as well. But mine, I don't really remember a lot of. When I first started getting back into this kind of stuff, and even when I was probably in high school, I remember my mother telling me that when I was a small child, like 2 or 3, that at church, I kept saying that I saw the angels. I saw angels up around the altar. And we didn't have any angels around the altar, other than just, Mary and Jesus and, the normal religious things. But we didn't have, like, actual figures of angels or anything. But I said that they were flying around. And she said that she told our priest that, and he said, well, she could have seen that. That's, it's possible, So even at that age, I guess I was doing some paranormal things. And a lot of children actually start out seeing things and hearing things and understanding and communicating way more than adults do. If something happens or is in the area, because they're more open to it. We kind of close our minds off later on as we get older and start to just dismiss everything. But I don't really remember that particularly, but I do remember I used to have nightmares all the time, as well as a child, about people that I didn't know. But in particular, there was this one individual who had long, flowing blonde hair, and she was in a white gown, and she was always trying to chase me up the stairs in my house. And I would feel her put her fingers through my hair, and she would just almost grasp me. And I had no idea who this woman was, and I was describing her one time, and my godfather, who doesn't live in the area anymore, he said to my dad, that sounds like great-grandma. So I don't know if my great-grandmother was coming to tell me something or try to get my attention from beyond the grave, but I don't know why she would. I never did figure that out, but I kind of started those things as a child, and then when my husband got into the paranormal with all the TV shows and everything later in life, I kind of got back into it. And you had mentioned that you started out as a child as well. Why don't you tell us something about your childhood adventures?
Well, what I remember most is my father telling me that my grandmother had the ability to see ghosts. And he told me a myriad of stories of her encounters running into ghosts. My grandmother lived in Memphis, Tennessee. I only met her 3 times in person before she passed away. And she passed away, I think, when I was about 12. But my dad, he would tell me these stories that, she gardening in the house and this, face would just come up at her. And he told me that he felt that I had inherited the same abilities that my grandmother had. And I think that's what got me into the paranormal. My grandmother, she would send me Nancy Drew books and Hardy Boys books from Tennessee to Seattle for me to read, and she got me, into reading. Then, as I started reading more and more, I got into Stephen King. I was reading Stephen King when I was like 12. The one experience that I can recall from childhood, young childhood, I was probably about 5 or 6, and I woke up, and I don't know why I woke up. I woke up in the middle of the night, and I looked up in the corner of my room, and there was a big giant wasp hovering. And when I say big giant, I'm talking like probably the size of a small cat. And yeah. And I remember I was just a deer in headlights. I couldn't move. I just was laying there thinking, just go away. And I, closed my eyes and opened it, and it was still there. Closed my eyes, opened them, still there. And then it just faded away. And to this day, I don't know what that signifies. Maybe at some point in my life, it'll make sense. But it's definitely stuck with me, that visual of this giant wasp or hornet type insect that hovering in my room. And then when I was about, I'd say 12, some friends from school, we had just gotten home from school, and we went over to my friend's house, whose mother had not returned home from work yet. And I, just out of the blue, I said, why don't we do a seance? And I'd never done a seance before, and this is well before computers. So, to do research, we had to go to the library. And I would often go to the library, and you would find me in the occult section, reading these books about, how to contact the afterlife, and is there an afterlife, and what, do ghosts exist, and all this stuff. So, but I had never actually read anything on how to do or perform a seance. But my friends and I, we were big fans of Karen Carpenter at the time. And so I said, we should do it. And again, this is during the day. This is about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 3:30 in the afternoon. And I said, well, let's do a seance and try and get Karen Carpenter. So it was me, my little brother, my friend, and her little sister. And we went upstairs to the second floor, to her bedroom, closed the door, lit some candles, and we started to play one of the Carpenter's albums in the background, just to kind of, get the vibe going, like, come on, Karen, right? And then I just said, okay, this is what we're all just going to go around the bed and hold hands and ask for Karen Carpenter to use our energy to appear. So we're chanting this over and over. I can't remember the verbiage, but I said, let us know you're here by moving an object in the room. And now we're all looking around the room, and I noticed that there was a hanger that was hanging off of a stake that was in the room. It was actually hooked onto the back of the door, and it came out, and then the hanger was hanging on this bar.
Like a door hanger.
Yeah. And I noticed the hanger was slowly swaying back and forth. And I said, you guys, look at the hanger. And as soon as I said that, all hell broke loose. My friend's little sister, she looked at the hanger, turned around, and fainted. My little brother looked at the hanger, wigged out, just flipped out, jumped off the bed. And now the hanger, I have to say, it was on the back of the door, which was the only exit out of this bedroom. So my brother, when he freaked out, he went the opposite direction towards the window. He was going to go out the window, and we were on the second floor, and I barely caught him before he went, and he wasn't even he wasn't taking the time to open the window. He was going to go through the glass. So I grabbed him just in the nick of time, and he is out of control, freaking out. And I'm like, he's like, I'm not going through that door. And I'm like, we have to go through the door. In the meantime, my friend is getting her little sister off the floor. She's coming to from after passing out. And I said, open the door really quick. We'll all run out. So we all run downstairs, and we get downstairs, and my friend's little sister, she's freaking out, just hysterical. And now we're running out of time. We have about 15 minutes until her mother comes home from work. And so we've got to get, we don't want to get in trouble for doing a seance and having candles lit and all this stuff. So we got to get our composure. We got to get things back to normal. And my friend's little sister was so hysterical, I actually slapped her to get, snap out of it. We got to get back to normal here. Your mom's coming home soon. And they're like, well, we've got to get upstairs and blow out the candles. And no one wanted to go back upstairs, And so before we went back upstairs, I said, I asked my friend's little sister, what did you see? Because she fainted. She downright fainted. She just dropped and fainted. I said, what did you see that scared you so bad? And she said, I saw a hand on the hanger. A hand touching the hanger. That's all I saw. It was just a hand. And then I asked my little brother, you obviously had a reaction, a very severe one. You were about to go out the window. What did you see? And he said, I saw Karen Carpenter holding the hanger, and she was dancing, and she was wearing a flowing gown, and as she was dancing and she was holding the hanger, that was what was causing the hanger to move. And then she lifted her leg up, kind of like a rocket, but it kept going up like beyond her shoulder, and that's when he flipped. And I'm like, okay, that's creepy. Karen, I wouldn't think Karen Carpenter would do that, but maybe, So, I was like, okay, I guess we were successful. Now we need to go get those candles blown out and, put everything away so we don't get in trouble. So me and my friend, who were the oldest of the group, said, okay, we're going to go back upstairs and handle it. You two stay down here, because all we saw was the hanger moving. We didn't see any part of the apparition. So we creep back up the stairs, and we creak open the door, and we get in the room, and the record player is skipping, and it was playing the song There's a Kind of Hush. So it was going, there's a kind of hush, there's a kind of hush, there's a kind of hush, just over and over. So I took the needle off the record. I'm dating myself, right? Talking about records and going to the library.
Yeah, what's a record? What's a library?
I know, right?
You read books?
And paper books. So, we got, stopped the music, blew out the candles, and it was a Friday night. And so her mom comes home, and we played it off. We didn't get in trouble. She never knew that we had done the seance, but she said I was invited to stay the night, since it was Friday night and we didn't have school the next day. So they invited me to stay over. So later in the evening, she offered to take us out for ice cream. So me and my friend and her little sister and her mother, we all get in the car to go get ice cream. And she starts the car, and the radio's on, and guess what song is playing on the radio?
I'm going to guess it's the same song that was replaying over and over and over again in the bedroom.
It absolutely was. It was, there's a kind of, I'm getting chills just talking about it. There's a kind of hush, and we're all trying not to react because we don't want to get in trouble for the seance and lighting the candles and stuff. But we're just freaking out, going, oh, how is this even possible? Like, it's just nuts. So, long story shorter, this is what I've been put on this planet to do. As a 12-year-old, I had a successful seance, and not with no clue as to what I was doing. I just did it on the fly, and it absolutely worked, 100%. And then I was all in after that. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Well, it sounds like a good one. So did you guys ever try that again?
Not a seance, no. We did try the Ouija board. Well, actually, they would not. I take that back. They would not participate with me. I tried to get them to do it with me, and they were like, no, are you nuts? Like, no.
Do you remember what happened last time?
Basically, yes. And then later on, when I was like 19, I had just moved into an apartment with some friends, and we had some friends over. A friend of mine had brought a Ouija board with him, and it was an older William Fuld Ouija board. So this is probably from like the 1940s, 1950s. And my best friend and I, we were on the Ouija board, and everybody kept saying, you guys are pushing it. You guys are pushing it. How can you prove to us that you aren't pushing it? And I said, well, I'll ask the Ouija board what your mom's maiden name is. Heather was the other girl on the Ouija board. Heather and I will both close our eyes, and then we'll see if it spells the right answer. So we closed our eyes and asked, what's so-and-so's mother's maiden name? And I felt the planchette starting to move, and it spelled something out. And then I opened my eyes, and I look across at my friend Heather, and she has her hands up by her shoulders, jaw on the floor. Everybody in the room is dead silent, bug-eyed, jaw on the floor. And they're like, I'm like, what? You left me on the Ouija board alone? And she's like, yeah, I took my fingers off right away. You did it all on your own, and we spelled the name right. Whatever, I can't remember what the maiden name was, but it was correct. So now everybody's freaking out, because they're like, this is the real deal, right? And I'm like, oh God, I don't know if I want to keep going, because she left me alone on the stupid thing. And, general rules, you're not supposed to use it by yourself. Some people believe it, some people don't. I prefer to play it safe and try not to use it by myself. That I was an unwilling participant in that particular situation. But the entity that we were talking to, we asked its name, and he said his name was Death. And I was like, oh, Death, okay. And then he said, he spelled out on the Ouija board, meet me on 100th and Aurora, which was an intersection that we were about 4 blocks away from. And so I said, oh my God, we have to go to 100th and Aurora right now. We have to go. And everybody in the room was like, are you nuts? You want to go meet Death? We're not going. We're not going to go meet Death. That's crazy. And I'm like, no, we have to. I mean, it's just right up the street. How did he even know that? Like, we have to go. I was like, if you guys aren't going to go with me, fine. I'm going to go by myself. And I'm bluffing, because I knew that they wouldn't let me go by myself. So I bluffed and said, yeah, I'll go by myself. And if something happens to me, you guys are going to feel bad. And they were like, okay, we'll go. So we all go together. There's 6 of us total. And it's probably around 11:30 at night. And Aurora Avenue is, it's not the nicest drag to be on that late at night. And so, we were already a little edgy just being on that strip at that time. But we're also expecting some Final Destination moment where a bus is just going to come careening into us, or the ground's going to open up and swallow us, right? Because we're going to meet Death.
Right.
So we get to 100th and Aurora. And now I'm really waiting for is lightning going to strike one of us, or, what's going to happen? Are we going to see a figure with a hood and a scythe standing on the other side of the street? But nothing happens. So we walk back to the house, and we get back on the Ouija board, and we're like, we want to talk to Death. And he said, yeah, I'm here. And I said, Death, we went to 100th and Aurora. Where were you? And he spelled out H-A-H-A-H-A. He was laughing. And that's when I just flipped the Ouija board off and was like, okay, I'm done. Not funny. That's he thought, and in my opinion, is that he thought it was funny that we just instantly did what he asked us to do. And I've told this story many times. It's actually been published in a few books. Jim Harold's Campfire and Joshua P. Warren's, I can't remember the title of the book, but it's by Josh. And when I told it on Jim Harold's Campfire, and he actually had people emailing him, enough to where he contacted me back saying, I've never had such an email response from any story. There were people that emailed from Seattle confirming there is a 100th in Aurora, and I had mentioned there was a movie theater there, and all validating everything I was saying. But the more disturbing comments were, Death never said when he was going to meet you on 100th and Aurora. Right? So
okay.
To this day, you
stay away from there, right?
I absolutely avoid that intersection. If I'm going down Aurora and I have to cross 100th, I'll actually get off of Aurora, go down 2 blocks, and then get back on at 97th. I just avoid it at all costs because I don't want to meet death before I'm supposed to.
I don't think any of us really wants to meet death before we're supposed to.
Right.
But, okay.
So
I don't know. It's kind of an odd one. Like, that death would actually make fun, have fun and play games. I don't know. Do you really think I don't know. I don't really think he's funny like that. But you never know. You never know. Apparently he is.
Well, I mean, I don't know what else. HAHA. I mean, he was
laughing, right?
Yeah, that's. And I will admit
Makes you think.
I actually did try to contact him again by myself. This is when I was 19, by the way. Before I had I take that back. I was so compelled with how this whole thing played out. I mean, I have no doubt in my mind that the Ouija board was working. We were talking to an entity. Whether his name was Death or whoever it was, or it was just someone that has passed away that was, having fun with a bunch of teenagers. I don't know. But I did get on the Ouija board once and try to contact him by myself, and it didn't work. So that was pretty much the end of my Ouija board using until recently. I attempted using it at the Cecil Hotel when we did our investigation there, but we didn't have any activity on the Ouija board there. So
interesting.
Yeah.
So you've done seances and Ouija boards and obviously EVPs. All of those ask individuals to communicate from beyond. What do you see as differences between them? Do you see any differences between them?
I do, and I've debated with a lot of people in interviews that I've done in the past about this, because a lot of people say the Ouija board is no different than a voice recorder or a EVP detector or a K2 meter, and I disagree. Simply because the EVP recorder, the K2 meter, EMF detector, those are all electronic devices that you can set down. You don't have to use your body to interact with. You don't have to touch it to interact with it or to have the afterlife interact with it. Ouija board, on the other hand, you are using your body as a conduit for the spirit to speak. And when you're using the Ouija board and it's working, you can feel in your fingers that the planchette's gonna move before it actually moves. Like, you start to feel like this energy or vibration in your fingers. You can feel it. So I think the Ouija board is separate on its own. And a little more dangerous than the other equipment, the more common equipment that people use, simply because you're having to utilize your body to make communication. And I don't know how much they use, you know what I mean? Like, are they just moving your hands? Are they going through your entire body? Is it coming up from the bottom of the Ouija board? I don't know. But that's my opinion.
And how about seances? How do you feel that those ones tie in, or they don't?
I say that's its own ballpark. It's its own like sub thing. That's a whole different ball of wax. Because you don't really use any equipment. At least the one seance that I did, the Karen Carpenter one, all we had was candles and the music going. There was, back then, here we go again, dating myself. There weren't K2 meters or handheld EVP recorders and stuff like that.
Not at everybody's fingertips anyhow.
Right. Well, and I didn't know that was something people did.
Right.
I was just doing this by the seat of my pants. But we did tell her to use our energy and to come through us to manifest herself or to move something in the room, and she did both. So I didn't feel like anything like I did with the Ouija board, where I could feel that the planchette was going to move before it moved. But that's just, I think, a whole separate thing, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
What's your take?
I've never actually participated in a seance at all. I remember as a small child, maybe I think I was I was 18. My sister played with one in our basement a couple times with a couple of her friends, but I just kind of watched. I wasn't like a participant, so I've never actually really done it myself, but I'm not a big trusting person, I guess. And I
err on the side of
trust.
Caution.
What's that?
You err on the side of caution?
Absolutely. And I don't I don't trust that others would actually not be touching the planchette in a way to actually force it to move and things like that. So I've not really experienced anything that would show me that it was, real. Now, you've had actual experiences. For me, it's actually sold as a child's game. Even at its inception, it was sold as a child's game. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, it just never, to me, was anything that I really believed in. A lot of people are terrified of them, won't go anywhere near them. I don't know. For me, it's just that other people are involved, and I am not that trusting of other people. And so I would go with the EVPs being much more meaningful than any Ouija board experience that I think that I would ever have, just because I know that has absolutely nothing to do with any other person. Living person, I guess I should say. Mm-hmm. Seances, I don't know. I haven't really had that much experience. I've never been in a room where one was being done. I've never done anything like that. Although I did watch one from afar, sort of, kind of. I don't know if it was a seance exactly, but there was in Gettysburg. You mentioned Gettysburg was being exciting, but there's an old. I don't know. I can't remember if they were all slaves or just black individuals who had died. It was their cemetery. I can't remember if they were slaves. It was called a slave cemetery or not. But in any case, we drove past there at night after one of our other events. We drove past, and they had candles all lit, and there were people in a circle standing around in the cemetery, and that kind of creeped me out. And I'm like, all right, I'm out of here, So we didn't actually stay long there either. And that's as close as I've ever come to what I consider to be an actual seance. But again, that involves other people too, again. Mm-hmm. So for me, they're quite different because you include other individuals in the others, where in EVP you don't really have to. K2 you don't have to. So that's kind of where I sit.
I'm picking up what you're putting down, the potential of human
interference.
Exactly. When I did do the Ouija board, I did it with my best friend, who I trusted would not move it. I don't believe she was moving it. In fact, I mean, when I spelled this dude's mom's maiden name by myself with my eyes closed, I didn't even know I was by myself. My eyes were closed.
Right.
You know, that was validation enough for me in that specific circumstance.
Right.
And then, you know, with the seances, you know, like with the Karen Carpenter thing, we definitely had a I don't want to say a positive response, but we had, I would call it successful, because of what the two younger kids saw out of the group. You know, my little brother and her little sister. I mean, and they were just so affected. They were both hysterical, just completely hysterical about it. So with a seance, I think, if you know you're in a controlled environment like your own home, where you know nothing's rigged, nothing's set up that's gonna, you know, fakery, right? Then anything that happens could be positive paranormal activity.
Yeah, I'm not ready to go playing in my house. I do want to have some rest once in a while. You know, I have no problem going to a haunted hotel or a haunted bed and breakfast and spending the night and playing. But I want to at some point have my house to myself.
Right.
I would be nervous to do it in my own home, but no problems doing it at other people's homes. We don't do that at our house, so. But
well, and you know, they say you're not supposed to investigate your own house either.
Yes.
So that's the one and only seance I've ever done. And you know, it's just occurring to me now, actually, I wonder if the reason why is because it was so terrifying the first time that I don't want to go back down that road. You know what I mean?
Right.
It was just nuts.
Yeah. So I find it interesting also that the two individuals who actually saw something during your seance that you had were the younger children.
Yeah, that's important to note. And that's why I was, bringing that up, because, you know, they were both 2-3 years younger than my friend and I. So, you know, I was 12, they were like 10 and 9. And it was the two younger ones that saw something other than the hanger. They saw the part of the apparition, or
right.
With my brother, the full apparition. You know, and then that's something him and I talked about as we grew up. It was something that never left him. It was one of the most disturbing things that he had been through. He was traumatized. I mean, the way that he described her dancing and her leg coming up and it continuing up over her shoulder, it's just, I mean, that's like Grudge, Juon craziness, you know, exorcist walk stuff. It's just creepy. And it really made me think, are we really talking to Karen, or are we dealing with something who's saying they're Karen, but they're not? Or is this just her showing off what you can do in the afterlife? Because you know, suddenly, I guess, when you become a ghost, you become a contortionist.
All right, yeah.
I don't know. I guess that's what I learned from that seance.
All right. And see, for me, for your stories, your experiences, I just see younger individuals that had, you know, the most of the experiences, and the fact that maybe who you were talking to wasn't necessarily who you thought you were talking to, because, you know, I don't see death as being a happy let's make fun. Maybe you weren't talking to death, maybe you were talking to someone else. And Karen Carpenter, was that really Karen? We don't know. It could be somebody else.
Exactly.
But at the same time, it could very well have been those individuals, and that's what's so interesting about the paranormal. So you don't know for sure.
Well, you know, I will say that when I was co-hosting for Beyond the Edge, we had John Zaffis on one night. And, you know, he's like the godfather of demonology. So towards the end of the show, I told him my Ouija board story, and I kind of wanted to get an idea from him of who death was. Like, could that have been really like a demon, the devil?
Right.
Right? And not only would he not answer my question, but I actually he got a little upset with me, and because I kept pressing, well, I just need to know, am I safe or not, or is this something that I need to worry about that's been like stuck with me? And he told me basically, that's it, stop, we're not talking about it, I don't want to talk about it, do not talk about it, quit asking me, which did not give me any comfort.
Yeah.
So then the following day, I messaged him on Facebook apologizing for, pressuring him to give me some answers, but that I was desperate to know from his perspective what I could have been dealing with, who could it have been that we were talking to. And he never replied to my instant message. So to this day, I don't know who Death is, but John Zaffis definitely did not want
hands off.
Yeah, he was like, no, stop. Don't say it again. We're not talking about it. Change the subject.
Very interesting.
Well, and that just scares me even more. And I just wish he would tell me so that I knew what you know what I mean?
I think everybody looks for validation all the time, and then when you have someone with their credibility that is very well known, and you're asking them what's their opinion and they won't answer, that does creep you out a little bit.
It's a little alarming, yes.
It's unnerving for sure.
Well, and I have done research trying to figure out if there was a demon called Death, and Horsemen of the Apocalypse come up, and one of the writers is Death. I think it's the fourth Horseman of the Apocalypse. One of them, his name is Death, and so I don't know if that's who it was. And that's just mind blowing if it is.
Definitely not something we want to hang out with.
No, and not having a attachment to. Because I was alone. I know I keep saying this, but I was left alone on the board. So I feel like I am at risk from that instance of being alone with this guy who said his name was Death, told us to go meet him on an intersection that was 4 blocks away, and then laughed when we got back, and I was like, where were you? Oh, ha ha ha. Yeah, that's really funny, bro. It's not funny.
I honestly don't think I would have gone, but I may have. I don't know.
It was hard to talk him into it. I basically had, like I said, I bluffed him and gave him a guilt trip and said, I'm going by myself, and if I don't come back, then my blood's on your hands. So they all agreed to go. But so for the rest of the show, we both have chosen a haunted location from our end of the United States. You from the east side, me from the west side. And we were going to cover a little bit of the history and then paranormal claims at these locations. I am going to go ahead and let you start with your location, which is another one that's on my bucket list.
Well, we also not only chose one from each of our sides of the continent, but we have both chosen not only from our areas, but also that involved women, since we're dealing with the ParaDivas, of course.
Correct, and we have also chosen locations that we have each been to. So you
Correct.
Have been to your location, I have been to mine.
And I've not been to yours, and you've not been to mine.
Correct. So let's end the suspense and let them know what the first location is.
All right. So the very first location that we're going to talk about is the Lizzie Borden house, the Lizzie Borden bed and breakfast. It's actually not her house. It was actually her father's house at the time of his murder. And so it's the big case, right? Mm-hmm. Case of the century. And Lizzie was accused, also acquitted, but she was accused of killing her father and her stepmother in that house. And so there are actually 24 paranormal claims to that location. And they involve apparitions, shadow figures, the sounds of walking, lights turning on and off, closing doors on their own. Just a cat. There's actually a ghost cat that kind of hangs out there.
Do you know if the Bordens had a cat?
The Bordens did not. However, their maid, Bridget Sullivan, did, and it was found in the basement with its head hatcheted off.
Wait, this is the first I've heard of this. When did they find the cat dead?
It was well before the murders, but they did think that perhaps maybe it was someone practicing.
Wow.
Yeah, so you can usually feel it. I didn't feel it, but they have had many reports of individuals who actually feel that, like a cat going and running around at people's ankles and things like that in the building. So,
do you know who in the Borden family discovered the cat in the basement?
That I do not know. I'm not sure.
I was just curious if it was Lizzie or if it was someone else, because I couldn't imagine it was Lizzie.
I am not sure. That's an interesting question, considering Lizzie supposedly found her father and Bridget found the stepmother. Yeah, so anyhow, the Borden house is still there. It's open to the public. You can actually rent the entire house for an evening if you so choose and desire. You can rent just a floor or you can rent just a room. It is in, for those of you who don't know, in Fall River, Massachusetts, and it has two addresses, the original address, and it also has a current address. It used to be, in Lizzie Borden's time, it used to be 92 2nd Street. Now it is 230 2nd Street. In fact, it was changed to 230 in 1896. They did some changes, and the numberings changed a little bit. Also, maybe something else that you might not know about the Lizzie Borden house is that it actually sits on the property that sort of ran in the family. Next door to the Lizzie Borden house, which is not that building anymore, but at the time, a little before that, there in 1848, there were some additional Borden murders that happened at that location, and that was by a relative of hers, Eliza Darling Borden, and she killed 3 of her children by throwing them down in a cistern, and then she killed herself, and that was on the adjacent property. And in the upstairs of the current Lizzie Borden house, which was still basically the area, there are 2 children who are supposed to be haunting that upstairs and playing marbles and things like that upstairs. So that's kind of interesting that it's all these women in the Borden family here too. Right. They did look into it when Lizzie was on trial. And they kind of said, well, maybe she's just crazy. Maybe it's risen in the family. Maybe that's what happened. But she was, of course, married into the family. Eliza Darling Borden was not a Borden by anything but marriage. Mm-hmm. So they actually think that she suffered from postpartum depression because she had 3 children in a pretty close time frame, and they just think that she, today she would have probably been given the designation of postpartum depression for her incident. So I think those are cool.
The children, did they go one by one, or did she have all 3 and then get rid of all 3?
She got rid of all 3 at once, from what I have read. So
they were a myriad of ages, probably yes. Infant to maybe 5 years old.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so from the reports, she actually killed them, and then she went and she killed herself. Some say that she slit her throat upstairs. Some say that she did it behind the fireplace. I don't know how she did that, but
her throat was slit?
Yes.
That is a very strange method of suicide.
Exactly. Usually you'll slit wrists or things like that, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, imagine cutting your own throat. That's got to be one of the hardest ways to do it if you're going to do it, which I don't encourage anybody to. And if you do have feelings of suicide, please contact someone for some help. But yeah, did they ever consider that maybe she didn't kill herself and she was a victim as well as the children?
Nothing that I have read indicates as such.
They just said they said, oh, she did it and then did herself in by slitting her own throat.
Right. But there's actually a large history of that. If you go back into the records in the 1800s, you'll actually find that there are a lot of individuals who were designated as having committed suicide, that if you looked at it today, you'd be like, that's not suicide. Like, people don't kill themselves that way. That would be very difficult to do, you know. But they did. They kind of marked it off as suicide rather than have a homicide. Maybe just to make it easier and not freak out the town and, you know, case closed. Perhaps. Of course, it's also the beginnings of, you know, real investigations. So the Lizzie Borden case is actually one of the very first cases that they did any photography at. Yes, it's very exciting for me to talk about that one as well. We did not show people's ankles, especially women in those days. And so apparently when her body was found, that's Abby Borden, the stepmother, her ankles were actually showing. And so before they took pictures or anything like that, they made sure that they readjusted her petticoats and her dress so that it would cover her ankles. They moved the furniture around so they could get better angles. They moved the body so that they can get better angles. And I'm like, that is not crime scene photography. You can't move things, you know, but... well, and they also had let people come in and tour the... Oh, absolutely. Yeah, which is total contamination. They had people coming in all day. Yeah. They actually left. There were very few police in town, actually, at the time of the murders. They were off at a picnic, and they were having a policeman's picnic, and so they actually had to go get more people. And so they saw this guy hanging, you know, down by the street, walking by, and he's like, hey, I'm going to deputize you, and you're going to stand here at this door and not let anybody in. And then the police went away to go get more, you know, backup. And this guy's like, hey, you guys want to see this, you know? But yeah, he would let people in, and they traipsed through the house looking at the dead bodies. It was great fun that day, right? Back in those days, it probably, yeah. What else? There was nothing going on in town. This is the best thing, right? Oh, could you imagine? I know, I'm morbid. No, I am too, but I would definitely be like, "Ooh, can I come and see?" I would have done the same thing. Like, wait, what? I can go in? I can go look right now? You're gonna let me? That's awesome, you know. Yeah. What some other interesting things about that building and that murder event, in fact, are that Lizzie was in the house the whole time from when the bodies were discovered through that night and everything. They did not remove her and her family and things from the facility. They actually slept there in the house. Her sister Emma had come home, so Emma was there, she was there, her friend was there. They all slept in the house that night, and with the bodies downstairs on the kitchen table. After they had been autopsied the first time, they were autopsied twice. After they were autopsied the first time, the Abby Borden in the kitchen, in the dining room next to the table, and then the father in the sitting room where his body was found. They did the autopsy of him in that room as well. But during the night, Lizzie actually went downstairs, took a look at the bodies, and then she went into the basement a couple of times. Once with her friend and once by herself. What was going on in the basement? Exactly. And today, there are actually reports of the apparition of of Lizzie downstairs in the basement looking for something. That is one of the apparitions that often gets seen at the Lizzie Borden house.
Did they ever find the hatchet?
Funny you should ask that. There was a hatchet head that was found in the basement in a box of ashes.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
That they do have today, to this day, in the Historical Society. It had a broken handle. According to one of the police officers who was there when it was found, he said that there was a hatchet handle there as well. The other police officer that was there said there was no hatchet handle that was found. It was just a head. No one knows, because there was no hatchet handle seen after that moment in time. Nobody knows if it happened to have been there or not, because it was never resurfaced. In addition, there was another hatchet that was found on a neighbor in a gutter on a neighbor's house during the trial, and it was a close neighbor, and they didn't know whose it was. They had some work done on the roof, and so he's like, I don't know, but this is a hatchet and it's really close to the scene. So he took it to the police, and the police said, you should take it to Taunton where they're actually doing the trial. And he's like, no, I'm not going to Taunton. If they want it, they can come get it. And they never came and got it, but some worker came and got it, said it was his, he had left it on the roof. And so he took it, and no one's ever seen that hatchet again. And it was never tested, anything like that. So did they find the hatchet? One will never know.
And so what are some of the other paranormal claims that happen at the Lizzie Borden house?
So obviously the cat and the children. There have been apparitions of, as I said, Lizzie looking for something in the basement. There have been women who were elderly that looked like they were tidying things. Abby Borden was actually an older woman, and so she, even though they had a maid, she would actually go ahead and do things around the house. Probably because of her background and upbringing, but also because they didn't trust the maid. So she would only allow the maid to clean certain things. Other things she was in charge of. So she's been seen in the house potentially. They think it's Abby. There has been a maid found cleaning things, which would be Bridget, also known as Maggie Sullivan. Maggie was not her name. Her name was actually Bridget. And there have been EVP recordings that they think was Bridget screaming, "Ma'am, come quick." She was the one who found Mrs. Borden. So they question whether or not it was, when she found Mrs. Borden, or if it may have been something else. There have been disembodied voices all over the place, laughter, female voices. There was even someone who said that they asked during an EVP, and I have not heard this EVP recording, but they said that they asked, did Lizzie kill you for the money? And a male voice answered, you got that right. I have not heard that for myself, right, but that is reported, and that would be very interesting because her father was a miser by every letter of the word, and he wouldn't even let them have lights in the house. They would still use kerosene lamps at night. Bathroom was still outside. They had a little privy in the basement. Nothing that would spend a lot of his hard-earned money. So
Lizzie ended up with in the end, didn't she?
What's that?
The money. Lizzie inherited the money.
Lizzie and her sister did, in the end, inherit the money, yes.
Yep.
Lizzie and Emma did get the money. There have been footsteps that have been heard throughout the upstairs. and the downstairs. We actually stayed, my husband and I, we stayed in the Lizzie Borden house overnight a couple years back, and I left the recorder running in my bedroom as we slept through the whole night, and you can actually hear creaking of the floorboards in the audio recording in our room, which is interesting because you can hear my husband. He's a snorer. You can hear my husband snoring, and I know I wasn't up roaming around. So that's an interesting thing. So we've actually had the footsteps that we've heard. There are cold spots in the house. What's that?
The room that you stayed in?
Yes, the room that I stayed in.
What room was it that you was?
I actually stayed in the John Morris room, which is the room that Uncle John Morris stayed in, and Abby Borden was murdered in. I laid on the floor where she was murdered. I played her for a little while, and then I got up on the bed, which is literally right next to it, and I slept there for the night.
Wow,
that was awesome.
I know. I'm super jealous. I want to go there so bad.
I want to go back, so maybe one day we'll go.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
I definitely enjoyed that a lot. I played Abby a couple times that night.
Excellent, excellent. And where is it located again?
It's in Fall River, Massachusetts.
Yeah, way over there.
Way on the other side of where you are.
Like the farthest away. Oh, good grief. Well, my location is going to be the Winchester Mystery House, which is located in San Jose, California. Construction began in 1884 by Sarah Winchester after she became the widow of William Wirt Winchester, who was the president of the Winchester Repeating Arms Company. He passed away from tuberculosis in 1881. After his passing, they had also lost a child previous to him passing away. So Sarah Winchester during her mourning went to see a psychic and wanted to see if she could communicate with her husband, and this psychic advised her that she was in danger from all the people that had been killed by a Winchester firearm, and the only way to protect herself was to move to the west and to build a house nonstop, to have constant construction happening on this house. And the theory of this is so that it would confuse the ghosts, so they wouldn't be able to find Sarah and get back at her for her husband creating this rifle that killed them all. So off to San Jose she goes and begins construction in 1884. Once construction began, construction went 24 hours a day for 38 years until Sarah's death. The house is massive with approximately 160 rooms, 40 bedrooms, 2 ballrooms, 47 fireplaces, 17 chimneys, 52 skylights, 2 basements, 3 elevators, and over 10,000 panes of glass. One window of interest Sarah had commissioned by the Tiffany Company. It's a spiderweb design with prismatic crystals to create a rainbow effect when light shone through. She installed this window on an interior wall with no light exposure, so the effect was never seen. The spiderweb motif also appears in fireplace grates throughout the mansion. Because of the duration of the construction, there are many features in the mansion that don't make sense. There is a staircase that goes to the ceiling. It's basically a dead end. It just takes you straight up to the ceiling, and that's where it goes. There is also what is called the 7-Eleven staircase, built in the shape of a Y, with one portion having 7 stairs and the other 2 having 11, with all 3 ending in different destinations. The mansion also features the infamous doorway to nowhere, located in a bedroom on the 2nd floor. This door opens to the outside, and if one were to step out, they would fall 2 stories straight down to the garden below. She also constructed what she called the seance room. Sarah would go into the seance room almost every evening to communicate with the spirits to receive design instructions for the mansion. The seance room features one entrance but 3 exits. Sarah Winchester was also obsessed with the number 13. There are 13 bathrooms, with the 13th bathroom having 13 windows. Most sinks have 13 drain holes. Many windows have 13 panes. All chandeliers have 13 candles, and they came custom with 12, and she added the 13th on each one. Many staircases with 13 steps, 13 ceiling panels in many of the ceilings, 13 prisms in the spiderweb window, 13 coat hooks in the seance room, and she even divided her will into 13 parts and signed it 13 times. Today is a tribute to Sarah. Every Friday the 13th, the large bell on the property is rung 13 times at 1300 hours, which is 1 p.m. Sarah Winchester died of congestive heart failure in her sleep in her bedroom on September 5th, 1922. Upon her death, all construction on the mansion ceased. Years later, in 1924, Harry Houdini visited the mansion, and as I hope most of you know, Houdini was a big debunker on seances and hauntings and spiritualism, and so that was why he went to the mansion. He wanted to debunk the claims of that mansion being haunted. But he left there with more questions than answers, and said that he felt that something wasn't right there, and he actually coined it the Winchester Mystery House. So Houdini named it what it is named today. Reports of the paranormal activity at the mansion are staggering. Most from many people who have taken the tour and employees at the mansion. The tour guides avoid the 3rd floor after nightfall, as some have heard footsteps coming down the hallway while alone. Others have heard their names whispered on the 3rd floor. Investigators have captured on film a small green vaporous hand on the stairway to the ceiling that appears to be pointing upward. Is there more to the staircase? Others have heard organ music in Sarah's room, as well as cold spots and red balls of light that seem to explode and then fade. Apparitions of a couple lingering in the corner of her bedroom, clothed in servant's garb of the early 20th century, have also been seen. A caretaker of the mansion claimed he heard breathing while he was alone. He also heard footsteps, which he followed to the doorway of Sarah's bedroom. Some have reported smelling chicken soup coming from the front kitchen, and others have reported lights turning off and on by themselves after the house is empty and locked up for the night. One psychic performed a seance and appeared to age dramatically and taken on the appearance of Sarah. There was also a room in the house that was flooded, for every item in the room was soaked, but upon inspection it was found the floor, ceiling, and walls were completely dry. Many have reported seeing an apparition of a man with jet black hair repairing the fireplace in the ballroom or pushing a wheelbarrow down the hallway, and it is believed that he is one of the construction workers. One of the mansion's caretakers was doing restoration work in the early morning hours before the tours began. He was working in a section of the mansion where several fireplaces are located, and they call it the Hall of Fires. While up on a ladder, he felt a tap on his shoulder. Startled, he turned around and found no one there. He brushed off the experience and continued working, only to feel the spectral touch again, this time a push on his back. He descended the ladder and left his project incomplete. During a tour, one of the guides had just brought a group into Sarah's bedroom. As the guide was about to begin speaking, a large sigh was heard. She thought a visitor had fallen behind the group and went out into the hallway to retrieve them. She didn't find a guest in the hallway, but she did see a form of a small, shadowy person glide around the corner. The guide quickly followed, and she turned the corner. She saw nothing, but she heard a second deep sigh. The guide believes that it was Sarah Winchester, frustrated that people were in her bedroom. Other tour guides have reported hearing odd footsteps and doors being slammed in sections of the house that are not open to the general public. There are also reports of a rocking chair that rocks on its own. The Mystery Mansion is believed to be one of the most haunted houses in America, and it's also called the House of 1,000 Ghosts. With such a compelling history, it's no surprise Sarah's story has been made into a movie called Winchester, which is in theaters now. The Winchester Mystery House has begun offering ghost hunts recently, including the Friday the 13th Flashlight Tour and the Halloween Candlelight Tour. For more information, you can go to winchestermysteryhouse.com. In 2016, it was announced a hidden room had just been discovered, an attic space that contained a pump organ, a Victorian couch, a dress form, and I think they mean like a dress pattern, a sewing machine, and paintings. And this room was recently just made available to the public. What other secrets have yet to be discovered at the Mystery Mansion? Time will tell, but I suspect more will be discovered. Now, my husband and I, we took the tour of the Winchester Mystery House. This was 5 years ago, 6 years ago. And it's just mind-blowing how this house was built and how easily you can get lost in this place. I can't even put it into words how just bizarre it is. My favorite part of the house was the seance room. When we went in there, I was just like, I had this, I don't know, feeling. I just was not that Sarah was there or that a presence was there, but it was just, I didn't want to leave the room. And the tour guide actually had to come back and get me and say, come on, join the group, because I was still in.
Stop lagging behind.
Right?
Messing with my tour.
Pretty much. So, obviously we didn't investigate it because we were just, doing the tour, and using any kind of audio recorder would have been, there would have been too much interference, with a group of people. Can't really investigate it during a tour. You just got to do the tour, right? But during the tour, the tour guide did tell stories. Most of what I just said, their experiences, the caretaker's experiences, other people that have taken the tour have, seen apparitions or claim to have seen apparitions. It's definitely a strange location. One I would love to investigate, to be able to, go in and have the place for myself. I suspect that would probably cost a pretty penny, though, so I don't know that that'll happen anytime soon. Like I said, they do offer these tours, the Friday the 13th tour and the Halloween tour. And I would suspect you could probably do an investigation during one of those tours, even though you have other people there. You just have to be really wary of your evidence and what you're hearing on the EVP, and you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So, yeah, Sarah Winchester, she built this house thinking it was going to keep her safe from everybody that had been killed by the Winchester firearm.
So, you were there, you said, about 5 years ago?
Yeah, maybe even longer.
Okay. And while you were there, did you have any, besides the desire to stay in the seance room, did you have any other actual experiences while you were there?
No,
No. Because the time frame that you would have been there was actually when there was a huge surge of claims. A lot of individuals between 2008 and 2013, there was just an absolute huge number of claims that were made. And if you go to their website, it was there about a year ago. I don't know if it's still there or not, but they actually have a thing where you can look at the number of claims per time period. And this was the biggest surge of paranormal claims in the history. And so that's kind of interesting that you were there at about that same time when that surge was happening.
And I didn't even know it.
Oh.
Right? Dang it.
Yeah.
But
how about in the kitchen? Did you smell any chicken soup?
I didn't.
Because that's one of the claims, is that people smell the chicken soup in the front kitchen, and they say that they haven't used that kitchen in a decade or more. But people say that they can smell chicken soup cooking in the kitchen.
Yeah, no, I really honestly had no experience. Nothing gave me goosebumps. Nothing, the only thing was that seance room. I was just enamored with it for some reason. And it's kind of funny because I was talking about, my seance earlier. And now, at the Winchester Mystery House, I was just magnetized to the seance room. Like, I was just like, I don't even want to leave here. So,
Very interesting. When you were there, had they opened the basement yet?
No.
Okay. From what I understand, they have the basement open now.
Mm-hmm.
That you can go
attic.
into. But they still haven't found the infamous wine cellar yet.
Is that where all the gold is supposed to be?
Well, they don't know what would be in there, but she went down there to get a special bottle of wine at some point, and she saw a black handprint on the wall, and she thought it was a sign, and so she had it, covered over. She had it sealed off, and so people think it's full of alcohol. Whether or not there's the treasures in there or not, I don't know. But from what I understand, they've not found the old wine cellar yet.
So there is more to be discovered for sure.
Oh, absolutely. I think they just found a new room a few years ago too that they didn't know was there
in 2016.
And so there's just so much oddity to the building of that. I'm sure that we're going to continue finding lots of things, throughout the years if we continue to go and restore that, because they're constantly doing restorations. So even now, after Mrs. Winchester is passed on, they're still doing modifications and upgrades and things like that to keep it, obviously from falling down and things like that. They're not adding on to it like she was, right. But they are still doing restoration work all the time, and you never know what they're going to find when they're doing those restorations.
True. And it is interesting that, you would think that they're probably doing, because of the size of the house, right? That's got to be a daily thing to keep it restored and in that condition. And they, probably rotate throughout the house and then start over and do each piece or part or room or however you want to call it, because it's all kinds of crazy in there.
Absolutely.
It's almost like an Escher painting.
I want to say that I read somewhere at some point in time that, by the time they finish painting the outside of the house, it's time to start again.
Yeah.
Like, it literally takes them that long to go around the whole outside, let alone what they are doing inside,
Yeah, so one has to imagine that at least Monday through Friday there is still work continuing on the house.
Yeah.
Just not through the night. For the 38 years that Sarah had construction going, that was 24 hours a day. She had over 20 construction workers that rotated shifts, and construction was nonstop from the breaking of the ground until the day she passed away.
Yeah, can you imagine being her contractor? You're set for life. You don't have to worry about ever getting another job. You're good.
Yeah, well, she inherited a huge amount of money when her husband passed, and that's how she was able to pull this off. Especially, for that time frame, it was phenomenal amount of money. So she basically had, just indisposable funds. The one thing that the contractor did have to deal with that was probably somewhat frustrating, although I'm sure they were, paid handsomely. She would come to him every morning with the notes or sketches that she got from her seance the night before, because the spirits were telling her how to build this house.
Absolutely.
Right. So she would go to the seance room every night and be like, okay, what do we need to do tomorrow? And she would, do some sketch or whatever, and sometimes she would write it on a napkin or a torn piece of paper, and she would hand this to the contractor the next day, and he's looking at some crazy drawing on a napkin, and she's just like, make it happen, like just understand it and make it happen. And I kind of feel like that's how the house ended up the way that it did, with so many twists and turns and doors to nowhere and staircases to nowhere, and it's just because I think part of it was interpretation with the construction workers versus what Sarah had in her mind or had received from the spirits. I think it just got mishmashed, and that's why it's such a tangle of a house.
Yeah, they were saying all the time how they would have to be working on this room, and then next week she wanted them to tear apart because that wasn't the way it was supposed to be now. And there was never any blueprints for the house because it was in constant change, and they built over 500 to 600 rooms, and now there's only 160. But over the course of all the building and demolishing and building and demolishing, they really built all these tons of extra rooms, and it's just crazy.
And chimneys that don't attach to fireplaces, doors that open to a wall. Yeah, it's just, the list goes on and on with the oddities in the house. It's just, and if that kept her safe from people that had died by the Winchester firearm, and she could afford to do it, then, more power to her. I'm really excited to see this movie that's coming out. I know it's not going to be completely true to history, but it seems like they're, for the most part, sticking to actual historical accounts of, and they're few and far between when it comes to Sarah Winchester. She was a recluse. She was very secretive. Didn't leave a lot of information behind after she died. So it'll in fact, I believe there's only one photograph that exists of her, and it's her in her carriage. And you see it right. It's one of the first things you see. You enter in the carriage room, or the carriage house is what they called it. And there's the one picture that, maybe there's more than one. I'm thinking about when I was doing my research now, and I'm pretty sure I saw more than one photograph. It's the only photograph that's in the house, is my understanding. And this was taken, I think, very close to her death. Maybe, months before she passed away. And they have it, blown up there and in the carriage house. And so, yeah, this movie should be really, really interesting to go back and see how all this played out, as much as they stick to the real story. I mean, I know, part of it there is going to be fiction because it's a movie, and then they're going to have to throw in, added scares and that type of stuff. But it'll still be interesting to see for sure.
So is this the one that's currently in theaters now?
Yeah.
That you're talking about?
Yeah, it's called Winchester.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't seen it yet either.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of movie theaters. I wait for everything to come out on DVD or on demand.
Yeah. Yeah, we kind of wait for that kind of stuff too. So I haven't seen it yet either. It's still in the theaters though, so it might be a little while yet.
Yeah, no, the last time I went to a theater, it was the remake of Evil Dead, and we went and watched it at the theater, and we were walking out at the end of the movie. We were coming out of the actual theater into the hallway there, and I felt like I felt this pinch on my leg, like I got shot with a BB gun or something on the back of my calf. And I kind of looked around and I'm like, what the heck was that? And there was there happened to be a police officer standing there, kind of, keeping an eye on things. And I looked at him like, did you see someone with a BB gun? Right? What's going on? And he wasn't alarmed. He was just standing there minding his business. And so I just kind of brushed it off. And by the time I got home and was putting on my pajamas, I realized I had a giant spider bite on the back of my calf where I felt the BB, what I thought was a BB, and what made it even weirder, and this is just coincidence, when you get a really bad bug bite and you itch it bruises. At least for me it does. The bruise that I ended up with from the spider bite looked like a skull.
A skull?
A skull.
Okay.
And like I had mentioned earlier, there was a movie theater that we used to go to all the time on 100th and Aurora. So now it ties in. Now I get it. Now you're not going to movie theaters because you think death's gonna come get you. Well, I mean, there's been other cases of people getting spider bites at theaters. They say spiders thrive in the theaters because they're indoors, they're never seen, and they have plenty of food.
All right.
Which would be the patrons. But just, a year or two ago, there was kind of a rash of reports of people getting bitten by spiders in theaters. And I remember one teenage girl, she had got bit on her hand. I think it was by a brown recluse or maybe a black widow, but it got super infected, and it was like bad, really bad. It turned into like this infected nastiness that she had to deal with, and she got it cleared up and everything was fine. She didn't lose any fingers, but that I heard that report just a few months after my experience with getting bit, and I just said, okay, that's it. I am arachnophobic. I'm probably the biggest arachnophobic in the world. So no, not going to movie theaters anymore.
All right.
I'm not scared to death.
Have to go out with a bunch of people. I prefer talking to the dead.
That's what cracks me up. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll go meet death on 100th and Aurora, but I'm not going to another movie theater because I might get bit by a spider.
Yeah.
Oh, but I'll surely go into that abandoned building that's full of spiders to do an investigation. No problem. Like when I'm in investigative mode, it's totally different. Like I'm not even thinking about spiders, In fact, a few birthdays ago, my husband had got me some new paranormal equipment, and we decided to go to a local cemetery, one that I frequented all throughout my life, and just to test it out and do something for the night, go out and do this like ghost hunt at the cemetery. And we got in pretty late, so come home, take my jeans off, throw them on the floor, put on my pajamas, get in bed. Well, the next day we had to get up for something. We had somewhere we had to be, and I was running late, so I just jumped up, grabbed my jeans from the night before, put them on because we needed to get going. I can't recall why. And as I was putting the jeans on that I wore in the cemetery the night before, I noticed there was a big spider crawling up the pant leg, and I brought him home on me the night before from the cemetery, and he spent the night on my jeans and was still on my jeans the next day when I
woke him up early. He woke him up early.
And I think that was my actual birthday, because I was like, this is how my birthday is going to start. He gave me the gift the night before, and so we had, gone to the cemetery, and then the following day was my actual birthday, and I'm like, is this really how my birthday is going to start? I'm running late, I'm throwing on these jeans from last night, and there's a big old spider on me right now. But that spider won't stop me from going to cemeteries. Cemeteries is one of my favorite places to go. I love visiting cemeteries. I think they are beautiful. They're serene. I like to see the different tombstones, designs, ages. There's so much that you can get and glean from a headstone.
Yeah. Every place we go, every town we visit, we do head to a cemetery there. Usually I try to find the oldest cemeteries in the area. Those are the ones I head to, but cemeteries are awesome. I agree.
Yeah, it's it does make the investigating challenging though, because being outdoors, you have the risk of contamination. Also, if you're videoing, you have the risk of insects being mistaken for maybe a streak of light. I'm not going to say orb because I don't know how you feel about orbs, but I don't think orbs are anything more than dust.
It depends. Some of it you can clearly tell is dust. Some of it's bugs, but sometimes you never know.
Well, and that's why I call it like a streak of light. That and I have caught that on video, a streak of light. That was actually at the Cecil, and it was a little concerning because at the time we were up on the 14th floor, and for those that aren't terribly familiar with the Elisa Lam case, the police released the last footage of her being seen, and that was her in the elevator at the Cecil Hotel on the 14th floor. She was staying on the 4th floor, but in the surveillance, it's about midnight. She's having some kind of issue going on in the elevator, and it's very, very disturbing to watch this video. And for those of you who haven't looked at the Elisa Lam video, the elevator surveillance video, I recommend that you look it up, or you can go to my YouTube channel, Marie Sameuls, and watch my investigation of the Cecil. I started out with the surveillance video of Elisa Lam on the 14th floor. But back to the streak of light. We were in a room on the 14th floor, and Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, he stayed on the 14th floor of the Cecil during his murderous rampage, which I find very intriguing that Elisa Lam was on the 14th floor, and that's the floor he lived on for a year and a half during, all of his assaults and murders and nastiness that he did. And at the time, my husband was wearing a Richard Ramirez t-shirt that we had purchased from the Museum of Death, which is in LA. I would recommend that anybody that visits LA go to the Museum of Death. It's really awesome. So we bought this Richard Ramirez t-shirt because we were going to try and contact him as well, since he spent, a year, probably his favorite year and a half at the Cecil, right? During his...
It probably was his favorite.
Yes, exactly. And
someone else's, but
No, I know, right? So we were asking if Richard Ramirez was there, and we were on trying to use the Ouija board, and we were like, Richard Ramirez, we want to talk to you. Are you there? And you see this light come out from the wall, and it goes straight into my husband's chest, and he's wearing this Richard Ramirez t-shirt. And I didn't know it at the time, of course, so I didn't review any of the video until we got back from LA. And when I saw that, I just went, oh my gosh, did my husband just get possessed by Richard Ramirez? That's the last thing I need.
I don't know.
It was definitely interesting. It was definitely an interesting 2 nights there at the Cecil. And I will also just like to disclose that we did not sleep at the Cecil. We had a different hotel room that we slept in, and I just paid the room rates as kind of like I considered it an admission fee, just because the hotel is, it's on Skid Row. It's in a very shady neighborhood full of very shady people. And it was a good thing that we had planned it out that way, because once we got down there, we went, I believe it was in April of 2014, maybe even May. So it was hot. It was like 80 degrees. And the Cecil Hotel does not have air conditioning. They don't have mini fridges. And if you go to open the window, there's so much traffic from the street below, it contaminates your evidence. So we had to keep we were just sweltering during the entire time we were investigating in the room at the Cecil, because we had to keep the window closed, and there was no AC, and it was just so hot in there. It was terrible. Not to mention, it's very dirty. Saw a giant dead cockroach in the hallway on our way to the room the second night. I did film that, but I didn't put it in my video on YouTube. I was a little worried the Cecil might come after me. So, well, from what I understand, they're not very welcome of people doing any kind of paranormal investigations there. And I'm surprised they didn't stop, because I walked in rolling with the camera. And the video, after it goes through the Elisa Lam elevator footage, it's us entering the Cecil. I'm holding the camera. We're walking in, and you can hear me say, "I bet security's going to stop me," and they never did. And we even went out on the fire escapes. We went out, which was very easy, very accessible. Probably safety hazard. It should not be set up this way. But you can just climb out this window and you're right there on the fire escape. And I wanted to see what she would have had to do had she used the fire escape from the 14th floor to get to the roof. And when I panned up and saw, she had that ladder goes up a good 20 feet above the 14th floor before you hit the roof. And I have a fear of heights as well, so I'm just announcing all my fears. Fear of spiders, fear of heights.
You're ancient and you have all these fears. Okay, that's what we got. Check.
Oh my gosh. So my intention was to actually attempt to climb the ladder and go on the roof and see if it would trigger an alarm, because they claim there's motion sensors up there that should have gone off when she was up there, and that none of these alarms went off. So they didn't find her body until people started noticing issues with the water pressure and the taste of the water and the color of the water, and then they went and looked in the tank, and then that's how they found her. So the night she disappeared, no alarms went off. There were no motion sensors signaled. The door to the roof, there's only one actual doorway, from inside the building to the roof is locked with an alarm, which I was going to test, and my husband swiftly stopped me and said, no, if it does send off an alarm, we're going to jail, and we're going to be going to jail from Skid Row. So the people in the jail, once we get there, are probably not going to be people we want to be spending a lot of time with. So how about we don't test this? And I thought, okay, you have a point. As much as I wanted to bust that door open and, see if the alarm actually worked, I was not able to do so. I was also not able to climb that ladder. It was too janky. It was too tall. I was already on the 14th floor. It was hard enough for me to just be on the fire escape. This is an old building, and I don't know how well they maintain it. I don't know how well those brackets are holding that fire escape to the building. So yeah, that was just a swift, quick, no, I'm changed my mind. I'm not going to go up the ladder either. It's doable, but what really gets me about the Elisa Lam case, and I didn't mean to get on this, but she was wearing Birkenstocks, and the ones that she was wearing are, basically like flip-flops or shower shoes, or you know what I'm talking about? And it would be
now.
it'd be really hard to climb a ladder wearing those shoes, I would think.
Probably.
And especially that high up.
I mean, I've climbed ladders in high heels, but, that's just me. I'm weird.
Well, and high heels they stick to your feet, right?
A little different.
Yeah, the Birkenstocks are floppy, so, imagine you're wearing, like, slip-on shoes, like mules, but with less material holding it to the top of your foot. And as you're climbing the ladder, it'd be tricky. I mean, it's doable. It didn't seem...
It's not your excitement for a Friday night.
Well,
not what you want.
Didn't seem like it would be a good idea to do in those shoes. And I had on regular tennis shoes, and I was like, no, I'm not, like, there's no way I'm climbing that ladder. I have theories of what happened with Elisa, and if my theories are correct, I was also potentially putting myself in danger climbing that ladder if there is some sort of entity or specter there at the Cecil that influenced her to do what she did, could potentially, knock me off the ladder. And I wasn't really... I'm so invested in my belief of what's going on at the Cecil that it kept me from climbing the ladder.
Kept you safe.
And out of jail.
Yes.
Because there's a big note on there that says it's trespassing beyond this point, and violators will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. That's what my husband kept saying. Violators will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Don't you dare push that door open. And I'm like, but I need to know. No, don't you do it. It's really funny because you can hear part of that going on in the video on YouTube, where he's just like, no, Marie, don't. And yeah. I wanted to. I really, really did. And I even considered doing it at the very last thing, the second night of our investigation. I considered just pushing it open and running, just because I really wanted to know if that alarm worked or not.
I'm going to tell you right now that the alarm would have worked. Mm-hmm. Because I'll bet any money after that case, they made sure everything worked.
Absolutely, and that's what my husband said too. He's like, since what happened with her, I'm sure they've fixed anything that wasn't potentially working. Right. And I don't know if you're aware, but her parents actually sued the hotel for wrongful death because she had access to the roof and ended up in the water tank, and she shouldn't have had this access. And unfortunately, they did not win their case. The Cecil one. Again. Well, I mean, yeah. They got Elisa Lam. Richard Ramirez stayed there. He killed 13 people? 14 people?
Did they blame the hotel for his murders?
I do.
Oh, you do? Okay.
I do.
Okay.
Well, and then between Richard Ramirez staying there and Elisa Lam and her demise there, in the 90s, there was an Austrian murderer who had been convicted of murder, wrote this book, got a Pulitzer Prize. Everybody was so impressed with his book that they thought that he was rehabilitated. He got a job working for a magazine, an Austrian magazine, and they said, well, we want we want to get the scoop on the LA crime, so we're going to send you to LA, and you're going to do ride-alongs with police and get the scoop on crime in Los Angeles. So off to Los Angeles he goes. He's doing ride-alongs with the police, and he also proceeded to kill 3 prostitutes. It's believed to be in his room on the 11th floor at the Cecil. And then he left. after he had killed 3 women over I want to say it was like a 4-week stretch. He killed 3 women. It's a very short time frame for that, many women. He left LA and went somewhere else in the US, but the LAPD ended up finding him and arresting him, charging him with the murders. And then he had murdered 1 or 2 women after he was released, before he was sent to LA. So then he was extradited back to Austria to be tried for those 2 murders, which he was also found guilty of. And the night that his verdict was read, that he was found guilty, he strangled himself with his sheet in his cell, and he never served any time. He served time for the first murder, but I think it was only like 4 years or something. It's a very convoluted story. It's a very convoluted place. It seems to attract the worst of the worst, and I feel like Elisa Lam was an innocent person who looked online and saw a website for a place called the Stay on Main, which is also actually the Cecil Hotel. They've rebranded, and this was even before Elisa Lam was found in the water tank. And when you if you go to the Stay on Main, if you Google that, it looks like a very nice hotel. So she didn't realize, what she was getting into, and what location and the type of people that stay there and that had stayed there in the past. And it was very unfortunate for her, because that was, that's the last place she ever was.
Very interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, I didn't mean to get derailed there, but...
Oh, that's all right. It's another location where there are some interesting things that maybe not quite understood, Indeed. Which is paranormal.
And that's what we do.
That's right.
And speaking of what we do, next month we have a guest that you booked, so I'm going to let you announce who our next guest is going to be on Thursday, April 5th.
Okay, so next month we are going to have our very first guest on our show, which will be Rochelle DeRozo. She actually runs Hillview Manor ghost tours and ghost hunts and things like that out there, and she's got plenty of stories and all kinds of information that she can give about all the experience that she's had throughout the years, and experiences, I should say. So, looking forward to hearing from Rochelle.
Where is Hillview Manor located?
It's actually in Newcastle, Pennsylvania.
Is that
about 45 minutes from where I'm at?
Yeah. I know you've been there.
Oh, countless times, yes.
Yes, so I'm very excited for next week, because with the experience between the two of you, I'm sure we're not going to run out of things to be talking about.
Absolutely. Actually, it was at Hillview Manor with Rochelle that my husband and I's business, the Dark Shadow Ghost Tours, took our first group of individuals for a full-fledged ghost hunt. We had gone on one tour of a location previous to that, but this was the first place that we actually took people to actually hunt on their own. So that was kind of cool.
And did you guys have any activity?
Of course. Hillview never fails. Hillview always has some sort of activity.
Kind of like Gettysburg.
Absolutely.
Pennsylvania's Gettysburg. Well, I guess Gettysburg is in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, Gettysburg is in Pennsylvania, but that's all right. You're from the other coast. We won't hold it against you.
And that's why I'm the host, folks.
Oh, goodness gracious.
Oh, well, Marianne, I think we did a pretty good job for our first show.
I hope everyone thinks so.
Me too. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Don't forget to join us for our next show with our first guest, which will be Thursday, April 5th at 8 p.m. GMT EST or 5 p.m. PST. And you can catch us on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Mairanne, thank you so much for a wonderful topic, wonderful information. It's been a great debut show, and I'm looking forward to a long, prosperous hosting joint adventure here with you.
Aw, thank you very much. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be a part of it.
I'm glad you're a part of it, too. There's no one else I'd rather have.
Aw, thanks. That's so sweet. Look at her being all sweet out there.
Yeah, this is the first show, folks, so just give me some time.
Does that mean you're not going to be sweet after this?
No. Well, I mean, maybe not to John Zaffis. That was a joke. That was a joke, Johnny Z. Don't be mad. All right. Enough goofing off. We'll sign off for now. Thank you all so much for tuning in to ParaDivas. And until the next episode, stay scared.
Oh, just some scary movie. You know, the one with the guy in the white mask who walks around and stalks babysitters.